I am.
Okay, great. Well, let me introduce you. I want to welcome everyone to our Thursday DMICE Research Informatics Research Conference. And we have a speaker who is relatively new to OHSU, but is working on a very interesting and important project that OHSU has some significant involvement in, the N3C project, the National COVID Cohort Collaborative Project, which is an initiative of NIH, the National Institutes of Health. It is administered by the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences, or NCATS. It's part of the CTSA program, which OHSU has been part of for many years. And this project came about, obviously, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Anita Walden is an instructor in DMICE. She is also the assistant director of the Clinical Data to Health project, which is the part of NCATS that is overseeing the N3C project. She has worked in informatics for a number of years. She previously held informatics research positions at Duke University and University of Arkansas. She has a master's degree in biomedical informatics from the University of Texas, Houston, and has really been running the day-to-day operations of N3C, which I personally find is a very exciting project. And in fact, I already have one master's student who is involved in using data from the project. So I won't, I could go on, but I won't take any further of Anita's time. She will give us an overview of the project, and hopefully we'll have a little time for Q&A when she finishes her talk. So go ahead, Anita.
All right, thank you so very much. Just making sure that everyone see my screens okay? You see the slides?
Yeah, we can see them fine. We can hear you fine.
Perfect, perfect. All right, hello everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you about this enormous effort, the National COVID Collaborative N3C. And I want to talk to you about the opportunities that are available. Before we do that, I wanted to give you a brief overview of N3C. Since we first started it, I'm going to tell you about where we are now, and then opportunities for not just faculty, but for students and staff as well, and then how to engage with N3C. So as Bill mentioned, though, before we start, I'm going to tell you a little bit about CD2H. This is this National Center for Data to Health, and the coordinating center is here at OHSU in our own backyard. Melissa Handel is the PI, and I am the assistant director. And so we're really thrilled to be, to work with OHSU and Oak Tree and those organizations here. And the whole purpose of CD2H, for those who don't know, is that it's really designed to accelerate informatics here across the CTSAs. And if you don't know what CTSAs are, those are the Clinical Translational Science Award sites. These are the academic medical centers across the United States. So it was designed in order to help create tools and resources and methods to facilitate translational research across the network. So that's the reason why it was designed. But a little bit more about the direction of informatics and innovation. So if you talk to someone at NIH, one of the reasons why CD2H was designed is because we want to build an infrastructure where organizations are sharing resources and tools across the CTSAs, but across NIH in general. So instead of one site creating a tool that's only used at one site, we want to be able to create tools that can be used by multiple sites. Also, as you're probably aware, is that there's an increased use or requirement or desire to use EHR data for research. And so we're trying to figure out ways in order to facilitate that through interoperability across the CTSAs and across academic medical centers. And this is done through common data models and national standards. One of the national standards that's really taken off right now is one that's used across hospitals nationwide, and that's Health Level 7. Anytime you're receiving lab information, a lot of times they're using the standard called HL7. Well, there's another standard at HL7 called FHIR, and that has a lot of excitement right now. And so the research community is really interested in using FHIR. So they developed a accelerator at HL7. It's called Vulcan. And that accelerator is to enhance that standard for the purpose of clinical research, so that way we can actually exchange information, not just within our organizations, but across organizations. The other direction that's taken place right now is that, we want to make sure that when we're doing research that is scalable, reusable, that is impactful, especially across large populations. We do a lot of small projects with 50, 100, 200 patients, but now we want to start doing things on a broader scale with thousands of patients and really see how things work. And then we want to demonstrate value. So if there's research we're doing, we want to figure out, what kind of value is that and the impact on innovation on our patients and on healthcare. And one of the other things that I think we've seen an increase is around team science. And so the NIH is interested in team science because they think that together with people from diverse backgrounds and different roles can come up with innovative solutions that might be a little bit more challenging if you have only clinicians and only epidemiologists on a team. So these are some of the directions and where research is moving towards. And that's the reason why organizations like CB2H have been established. So one of the things we want to be able to do with N3C is be able to answer different types of questions. And actually, before I talk about some of the questions, let me talk a little bit more about N3C and the way it's designed. So right now, a lot of times what happens is that you can do what's called federated query. And that is, you have a question that a centralized group is asking. They send that question to the different organizations. They come up with the answer. They send the answer back to the centralized group, and that group combines all the answers from all the different organizations and come up with an answer. And so that's when the data, stays local, doesn't go anywhere. And you can answer questions such as, how much time, can someone stay on the ventilator if they use a certain type of drug? What N3C is doing, though, is more centralized analytics, and that means the data is in a central location. You could do a little bit more than you can with a federated query with central query. And so one of the things you can do with centralized analytics is use different types of tools and do more predictive factors. So in this example here, what are the predictive factors regarding severe outcomes for COVID? So this is the reason why we took this approach for N3C. Data is in a central location versus in a federated location. And so we decided that, instead of everybody just sending us their data, we want to do it in a common format. And so we have 4 models to choose from. We have ACT, we have OMOP, ProCoreNet, and we have Trinetics. And so most academic organizations across the country are using one of these 4. And this makes it easier for us. So they can pick either one of these and send us their data, any one of these, using any one of these data models. From there, we are taking these 4 and harmonize them to one data model, which is OMOP. And so that's what we decided to do. And in order to do that, though, we had to set up work streams in order to develop this infrastructure. So starting first with data partnership and governance, we actually had to make decisions as far as how best to actually share that information and share data and create the policies and procedures around that. And then we have the phenotype and data acquisition. This is the group that developed the phenotype for COVID, and they're working directly with the sites in order to get the data into N3C. And so if any of you guys have been working with the work here, with the data here at OHSU, know that this group is very hands-on. They're very helpful. They'll do anything they can to assist with getting your data into the N3C environment. Then once the data has been brought into the environment, there are data quality checks that are run on the data. And and most people do a really good job with submitting their data, but sometimes there are things you may not realize. Like, we did receive data where there weren't any COVID patients. And that was the whole purpose of our study. So we had to go back and ask them to add the COVID patients. So they take and run data quality checks. And then after the data quality checks have been run on the data, then they start to harmonize that data with the OMOP model. And when they do that, there's also another set of quality checks that are run too. and they work with the sites if they have to add or make any changes. So once it's gone through that data quality pipeline that we established, then it's placed into the enclave. And when it's placed into the enclave, there's another step. There's a synthetic step. And so with the data that's placed into the enclave, there's synthetic data, a derivative of that data that's been created. And that's right now it's a pilot. We'll talk a little bit later about the synthetic data, but it is a pilot project. People are really not sure exactly how synthetic data works, how it's going to impact research. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to, look at the research around that. So they're actually in the process of validating the data now, and we hope to have the validation done sometime in the next month or so. So this is the pipeline of the data that's been established. And so basically I'm going to go back. We're hoping that with this data, we can answer questions. We can answer questions such as, predicting who might have severe outcomes from COVID-19, because those things we don't really know the answer to just yet. Also, if you have a rare disease, this is an opportunity because you have more data to look at those rare observations. And then you can also do a comparison. How does your local data compare nationally with the national outcomes? And then there's also questions we want to be able to answer around social determinants of health, since that seems to be a factor when it comes to COVID-19. So what is in the N3C data? Well, this is an interesting question. And I'll tell you the reason why it's interesting. But for the most part, what we have here is what we're receiving. And we're not just looking for the data in a point in time. So we're not just asking people to just send us your COVID data, but we want to get information about any devices or other conditions that they have. And we're looking at data not just for that particular visit, but we're looking for data 2 years back. So we're asking sites for a patient that has been tested for or suspected to have COVID or tested for COVID to provide data about observations, any other specimens and procedures they might have had from this date 2 years back. And so that's what we're doing now. If you want more information about the actual phenotype, you can find the phenotype listed on our website and the definitions for that, which ICD codes are using. It will change. We are looking at a different version of the phenotype. Now that we have more information about COVID, we're making some changes to it. So if you think back early in March and April, we didn't know very much about COVID, and there weren't the codes that were in the EHR for COVID. People were, using all different types of clinical onset information about the disease. And so that's what we've been using. But now people have a good idea about how to define COVID. And so that's just when we're going to change the phenotype for that. But the reason why I say this is interesting about what's in the N3C data, because it does depend on the data model. So the 4 data models were designed for different reasons and different purposes. So they're not all alike. They don't all collect the same information. So, for OMOP, you may have certain things that are in there, they're not in PCORI. So that's just something to note, that if you're using the data and you notice there might be gaps, it could be because the PCORI data model or Trinegus data model collected different information than OMOP did. So there will be differences across the sites depending on which data model they used. All right, so a little bit about the enclave. People have asked me, why do you call the data enclave the data enclave? Why don't you just call it the data set? Well, it's much more than the COVID data set. The enclave is really a secure analytic platform that includes a lot of different factors, a lot of different things. It's FedRAMP compliant. It resides on the NCAT servers. And it's an environment that includes the N3C data coming from the sites across the country, but it also includes tools. And we'll talk about some of the tools in a moment. It includes tools, but you also can perform your analytics. Nothing leaves the enclave. So you do all your analytics within the enclave. You use your tools in there, you perform your analytics, you come up with your research answers all in the enclave. The synthetic data is also in the enclave. And then you also build your data sets in your enclave. So everything is done within the enclave. And so that's the reason why we call it a secure platform, and it's more than just a data set. So these are just some of the tools that are in the enclave. In addition to what's in the enclave, we also hope to link to other data sets. We hope to link to imaging, like COVID imaging. And there will be external data sets that will be available in the enclave. There are some of the domain teams and clinical research teams that ask, can we include this other data set? Because this will help enhance our research. And so we have a process where if you want to use an external data set, you make a request, it's reviewed by the governance team, and then it's, and once it's approved, then it's implemented into the enclaves. And there's a way that you can perform linkages. So there is a process for that. So, but these are some of the tools that are available. There are a lot of other tools that are available, so you can always ask us if there are additional tools. And then there's a question about, well, I have a tool. Can I implement that tool and use it in enclave? There's also a process for that too. First, there's an evaluation of that tool to determine if it already exists or not. And if it doesn't exist, there will be an evaluation to determine, if it's safe and secure to use. All right, so we're going to talk now a little bit about our progress. So back in March, when there was a lot of this, when the COVID virus, first, blew up and everybody was kind of in a panic, we were all saying, okay, we got to figure out something. We've got to be able to answer questions, and we need to do something fast. So in March, Melissa Handel, Chris Shute, and Ken Gersing from NCATS got together and said, we need to build this enclave that can be available for researchers to use so they can actually ask questions and find answers. And this all happened really quickly. So if you look at the timeline here, so in this timeline, there was a webinar when we first launched that happened around April 13th, when we said, this is what we are going to do, and this is our plan. And you can find that webinar actually on our website if you want to listen to it. And then right after that, phenotype 1.0 was defined. We created phenotype 1.0. This is a COVID phenotype. And then there was a letter to the CTSA steering committee. And the letter said to the steering committee, there's this data set that's being created. This is what the nation needs. Let's do this. And then right after that, the data transfer agreements were finalized. And then Johns Hopkins is a central IRB. They got that established and set up for a central IRB for this effort by May. So just think, in just less than, less than 2 weeks from here's an idea to, get a phenotype, we already had an IRB set up. There was a town hall meeting with the CTSAs, but even before the town hall meeting took place, the first data transfer agreement was signed. People said, I'm up, I want to join, I want to start sending my data. Chris Austin had a town hall meeting encouraging CTSAs to participate. And right after that town hall meeting, the first data landed on our doorstep. So by May 12th. Then between May 12th and August, a lot of stuff happened. We had to build the infrastructure. We had to design the pipeline. We had to get all the governance in place and all the policies established. We had to design the data use request process so that way collaborators and investigators can submit their projects. We also had to set up the data access committee at NCATS to review these requests. And so all that took place within a short amount of time. And so by August 17th, we had our soft launch where we opened up and tested the process. And so that's what we did. And the official soft launch, when it was announced for everybody, was on September 2nd. So, this happened quickly. We had, 16, 20-hour days. We worked every day. We didn't know which day it was, but there was a lot of work happening really fast. And the reason why this was able to be done is because we built this based off of the CD2H infrastructure. So a lot of this was already in place. The relationships with the community were already in place. Some of the organizational structures were already in place. Where something like this probably would have taken a couple of years to design, we were able to do it in several months. So where are we today? Well, it's exciting that we have 2 billion rows of data currently in the enclave. We have 2 million patients in the enclave. There are 72 data transfer agreements that have been executed. 72 sites have agreed. Currently going on right now, there are 58 projects. There are 31 sites that have data in the enclave and released to the enclave. But what's even more incredible is that, with CD2H, there are over 1,200 people who have registered with CD2H, representing over 300 organizations in 14 foreign countries. So this is just not all just the CTSAs. There's so many people who see this as a valuable resource and who are here to help get it established and lift it up, as well as perform research. And these are just some current statistics about what our cohort looks like right now. And we will have a cohort paper that's going to come out really soon. It's being authored right now. And so you'll get more information once that paper has been published. But this just give you a little bit of information about, about what we have here, our demographics. When we first started, people assumed that, as far as age group, that we'll see a lot of people in the 65 and plus age group that are in our data set, when really it's between 18 and 64, with 30 to 49 being the largest age group that's in the data set. So the data transfer agreement and OHSU. So OHSU is submitting data, as I mentioned. They're submitting it using OMOP. The Oaktree group has been responsible for that in the data warehouse. And so we have our DTAs executed and signed. And also, OHSU was also the very first data use agreement assigned and executed as well. And so that means anybody here at OHSU who has a OHSU email address, and that's very important, will can go into the enclave and go ahead and start submitting your projects and using the data. So we're excited that we were one of the first, and that it's a resource for OHSU to participate in. And this is just a list of all the other organizations who have DUAs. That was as of yesterday. So you're asking, well, what's the benefit of N3C? Yeah, well, it's a great COVID, database. It's access to large-scale COVID data. Well, what else is there? Well, first of all, this data is not just OHSU data. It's data from across the nation. Also, it's great for pilot data. So if you're looking for a grant proposal, and probably right about now, NIH is probably granting money for research on COVID-19. And so this can be used for pilot data for grant proposals. It's a great opportunity for KL2 and TL1 and other scholars. It's also a good opportunity for Team Science. This whole network is around Team Science. And this is a great, if you ever thought about Team Science before, you wanted to get involved, this is a great opportunity to do that. It gives you access to other experts. So if we don't have certain experts here, there are experts in the community. It's also a great opportunity to learn. I've learned a lot since I've been on this effort here. I didn't know a lot about machine learning and some of the other deep learning tools, and I'm beginning to learn more about that. So there's a great opportunity to learn other analytic methods and processes. So I think for OHSU, this is also a great opportunity to develop and grow a diverse workforce, and also for us to help with our career advancement opportunities. So you can participate on as far as research, you can participate on community research teams that have been established already, and I'll go through those domain teams in a moment. As I mentioned before, there's a large opportunity here to learn about the different types of data models. Learn about machine learning and other statistical methods. There are domain groups around methods. So if you want to learn about methods, you want to see what people think about your methods, this is a great opportunity to do that. But one thing I think is interesting is that it's a great opportunity to work with healthcare data. So at many institutions, they always talk about, well, there's a research group and there's a healthcare group side of things, and we don't always get access to the EHR data. We don't have access to that, so we can't really do a lot of research. Well, here you get to actually use EHR data. And not only are you using EHR data, but you're using EHR data from multiple institutions, which is unique because data is different from different places. So you get to kind of see how things work differently across large scale. It's a great opportunity for us here at OHSU to build training programs or participate in training programs and partner with other groups and provide a research experience for our trainees. And not just maybe for research purposes, but if we want training programs for staff, if we want smaller projects like might be a 1 or 2 month project for a class, this can be an opportunity to do that. Another way this can actually help with advancement opportunities and developing a workforce is the networking aspect of it. So we have access to other CTSA programs, but other experts across the country. A lot of people who are involved in this effort are not, all of them are not involved in CTSAs. They come from other universities and they have this expertise. So it's a great opportunity that if you don't have the expertise here for something you want to do, you might be able to collaborate with someone else to help you on this research project, and you guys might be able to get something submitted together. So a little bit more about team science. So we do have these teams, and as I was mentioning before, that these teams are made up of a diverse group. We have people with different backgrounds, you know, we have statisticians on them, people who have expertise in study design. So if you have a research question, it might be a good way to get feedback on the study design and evaluation. You have informatics experts, but also clinicians are part of these domain teams as well. So if you may not have a particular clinical expert, you know, readily available, you might be able to go to one of these domain teams and get their input on research designs. There are also people who are involved from commercialization groups, pharma groups are participating, and other types of communities as well. And there's also the technical aspect to this group. So there are people who have expert in the enclave itself. So a lot of people think that, okay, I'm going to get access to this data and I'm going to start doing research. Well, the enclave is not that easy to use. Just giving you fair warning. So it takes a little bit of time to get used to it. It's different. And you may need technical expertise to help you with that. And so joining these domain groups will give you access to technical experts who know how to use the data. They understand OMOP. They understand technologies and terminologies. They can help you understand what the data is and is not. If you need a code set developed, you can get help with that. At the same time, this could be an opportunity, you know, to actually grow smaller groups, have smaller groups, and do smaller team science, have smaller team science opportunities as well. And so a little bit more about clinical domain teams. You can find more information on the N3C website, but we have these clinical domain teams that have been established. There are probably about 18 to 20 of them. They're growing. These have been organically created by the community. They see a need, they get together, they ask others to join, and they start doing research. And so this is just a list of some of the domain teams that are available, that are out there now. Some are more active than others. If there's not one out there that meets your needs, you can definitely create your own domain team. People are very collaborative when it comes to these teams. And the latest one that has been established is the machine learning domain team led by Peter Robinson from Jackson Labs. He sent out, I think they're meeting on Thursdays, and you go to the website to find more information about this particular domain team. But there's a lot of interest in machine learning. In fact, I think the last time I heard this morning that 62 people already signed up for this domain team. So there's a lot of excitement around machine learning. So if you do participate in a domain team, there are some resources to help support you. And so some of the data that you need access to may require an IRB. And so if it requires an IRB, the domain teams can get together and come up with a common IRB approach, so that way you can get things through your IRB and submit them faster. Also, there's an environment for collaboration. We use Google platform for that. And so there are documents that are out there. We use Slack. We establish email listservs. We publish the meetings through the calendar. We send out announcements, about the meetings. But more so than just the logistics, for that, there's shared resources. So if you need a code set developed or anything like that, you might be able to share code, we share resources across the domain teams. So if someone already created a code set or created a resource on one domain team, they can share it with you. So that way you don't have to recreate the wheel. So these are, and as I mentioned, there are quite a few projects that have already started. And so you can find a list of projects on the website. Most of the projects you can join as a collaborator. There are some projects that are closed right now to collaborators. They may be just starting and are trying to get themselves organized. But we encourage projects to have open to be open and allow collaborators to join, and most of them are. And so, if you want to see a list, you can go out to the website. And as it was mentioned, we do have OHSU is participating in at least 2, maybe 3 projects. So David Ellison from Oaktree is participating on the AKI in Pediatrics project. And as was mentioned before, we have a student here who's participating, who has his own project. He's a lead investigator for his own project. So this is where OHSU is participating. I think they're also participating in some of the synthetic projects too. This is an example of a domain team here. Sharice Matlock has done a wonderful job with social determinants of health. It's been a very popular domain team. And what she's done, she's brought together a community of experts who are interested in understanding social determinants of health around COVID-19. What makes her team actually unique is that they're one of the very first ones who also mentioned, that we wanted to bring in external data sets. And so she has had hackathons and things like that to get people up to speed. So this is just an example of a group who's already started to do some research and start to look at some of the things that are in COVID-19 data, and they hope to publish soon. So other examples of opportunities for researchers here at OHSU, like I said, learn to work with large-scale EHR data. It's a good opportunity to understand common models and how to work with them. So I think as we start to move forward in research, especially getting data from EHRs, we're going to have to learn how to work with common models a lot more. So this may be an opportunity to start doing that. Also develop skills to create, organize, and run cross-discipline teams, and also maybe learn things like predictive analysis. So you're saying, okay, I don't have a project. I'm not, I don't have a research question, but I'd like to get involved. Well, no problem. There are so many other activities you can actually participate in. And so the data liaison role is a role that's been newly created. And it's people who are comfortable with data. And this is to really help the domain teams, is to help them understand EHR data, because a lot of clinicians and researchers don't really understand EHR data. And so a data liaison can let people know like what normally is found in EHR data and what's not. So this is a great opportunity here too. Also to identify and create code sets, help with linkages to other data sets, and help the domain teams curate data elements. And the reason why I mentioned this is because with data harmonization, we have to create the code sets. They didn't come intact. So if their code sets have been developed, but if you have a stroke study and you need to understand the symptoms of stroke, you might have to create the code set for stroke symptoms. And so someone has to do that. And so that's what the group is doing now, creating these code sets that can be shared with the rest of the community. So if you're interested in about opportunities for participating, and I would say joining a collaborative analytics group is a way to do that. You can join any of these groups here. If you're interested in governance and policies, feel free to join those groups. The phenotype, data acquisition, and data ingestion harmonization, if you're interested in data models, and research around that, you can definitely join that. But collaborative analytics is where I think most people are probably going to be interested in if they want to know more about NLP, methods and practices, use of different types of analytics, and research around that. These are opportunities here, and I would suggest that to seek out those groups. And also synthetic data. So there's a lot of interest around synthetic data. The NIH is interested in it. There is, the FDA has shown a lot of interest in synthetic data. And then other organizations, other universities have contacted me and said, we would like to use synthetic data too, but we want to use it also for educational purposes. And so they're trying to figure out ways, best ways to develop programs around using synthetic data for training purposes, as well as here at OHSU, we're looking into that. what the NIH is interested in this, and they want to move forward with it, but as I mentioned before, that they want to get the data validated first before they open it up and to see what comes out of it. And there are different companies who create synthetic data. So we're working with one company now, but there are other companies who are working with who also generate synthetic data. And so there's an effort to look at those different companies and kind of evaluate their methods and processes around synthetic data and generation of those. And so if you're interested in synthetic data, if you have questions about synthetic data, they do meet monthly, but they have office hours, and you're welcome to join our office hours to ask questions about synthetic data. Other areas, as I mentioned, if you're interested in NLP, there's a group that's working on methods for NLP. They're a national group that was established before they joined N3C. And we're planning to change the protocol in order to get more text data so we can run some NLP on it. But they're right now designing their methods. So if you're interested in participating in that effort, I would suggest to seek them out as well. And other opportunities, Justin Reese from Lawrence Berkeley Labs is working on knowledge graphs. So if you're interested in knowledge graphs, I'm just showing different examples of different opportunities that are available, and this is one. This is not my area, so I probably can't answer the questions about knowledge graphs for COVID. Sage Bionex is one of the groups that has dream challenges going on right now. And so they have students and some faculty members who are involved in this and doing research. I think like the University of Alabama had a large effort around dream challenges for their organization. So if you're looking for opportunities, to join other groups or to test anything, I would suggest seeking out what they're doing and participating. One of the things that I want to just point out, and this is important, many times the people who are published are going to be lead investigators or clinicians. We truly believe that it does take a village. It takes all of us to make this happen. And therefore, everybody who's participating should receive acknowledgement and attribution. So the enclave is set up that if you're participating and developing any of the artifacts that are going to be used in publications, then you should be recognized too. And so we're building an infrastructure within the enclave in order to track that information so that way you can get credit and attributions automatically attributed to you for anything that you create and anything that might be shared with other groups. So, so this means that anybody who's a statistician or informaticist or somebody who's working machine learning, anybody who's working in this should be able to get attribution. So that's really important. We also have the enclave set up for reproducibility. So if you have something you're published, some of the journals now are asking for information on reproducibility. The enclave is set up to do that, to reproduce the results. And we're working on now how to get those reports designed so that way that can be provided. So that way when you are submitting to Lancet or any one of those, that you can have that kind of report so you can get into those high impact journals. So I just want to mention there's Provenance and also ability to share information within the enclave. One thing I want to point out are the different data levels. So all data is the same in the enclave, but what you see could be different. So as I mentioned, there's synthetic data. The synthetic data is put in the pilot. There's de-identified data that's also available. And there's also what's called a limited data set. So the limited data set does have some dates and some zip codes in there. If you do use limited data set, or if you need a limited data set, you do have to have IRB approval, and you have to justify why you have to have a limited data set and why the de-identified data will not work. So just want to let you know that when you get ready to submit your request for data. So, but these are the different levels. Most people, if you think that you may eventually use limited data set, I would still suggest using the de-identified or requesting de-identified anyway first, because when you're working on a research team, everyone may not be able to get their IRB approvals at the same time, and you probably want to start at the same time. So my recommendation is to apply for de-identified data to get started. And then once the majority of your team members have received IRB approval from their institutions, then you can submit for limited data set and you guys can all move up together. All right, getting access to the data. So OHSU, you can get access to the EHR data. And so because the DUA is in place, but you'll have to register to get access. And there's two things you want to do. You want access to the data, but you also want access to the documents and supporting documents. And so you want to sign up for that. You also have to have training. And the data use request will ask you for your dates of training. So your city training, you have to provide the dates for your city training. And then NIH also requires you that you have to have some kind of NIH security training. So you have to take that. So my recommendation is there's a checklist on the HL7, there's a checklist on the N3C website, and I can send it to you if you ask me, and it'll tell you everything you need to do. And I would suggest going through that checklist first before actually submitting your DUR, because once you go into the data use request form electronically in the enclave, you can't get past providing the information. So it's best to go ahead and get all that in place first and then submit it. And once you submit it, you get your account set up for the enclave, and then you submit your request for the research project. It just has to go through the data access committee. Now, if you're a collaborator, you're welcome to join existing projects. And so if you want to, as a collaborator, join, you can. And there's a slide, you still have to fill out a data use request for that, but you can actually join as a collaborator. You won't have to go through the data access committee for that unless it is LDS data, and then it's not really going through the data access committee. It's just somebody just making sure that you have your IRB documents in place. So go out to the website if you want to register. There's a button there that says access to the enclave. You'll fill out a form, but it might be a little tricky because when you click on that button, you actually will see this. And so what it is like an authenticator, because we want to make sure people's email addresses are accurate. And so what you'll do is you'll sign into this here. You'll see OHSU. It pop up and you click on the OHSU icon. It's not showing here, but you click up on that OHSU icon, and that's how once you do that and authenticate through OHSU, then you can actually sign in sign in to request an account for the enclave and the forms. There are resources available on the webpage. We are going to restructure this. I would love to get your feedback. So much of this has been so fast. We threw things up there. Things may not be as easy to find as they probably should be because things happen so quickly. But if we would love to have people to give us feedback on ways to redesign this better so it's easier for researchers to find information they need. But we do have some information that's out there, governance documents, access to domain teams and things like that if you need it. And just to let you know, we do have a publication already. We have the manuscript about our methods. It's a methods manuscript, and so there's a link there if you want to read more about what we're doing. The one thing I just want to say is that we are trying to make sure that whatever we do is definitely reproducible. And if you have a question, feel free to contact me directly. Or just know I get lots of questions from around the country, so I may not always get to your email fast enough. The best thing to do if you have a question is to go to the support desk page and just submit a question. But we also have our office hours, so we do have someone who is available on Tuesdays and Thursdays who can answer your questions about anything concerning the enclave. We will have orientation for research teams and researchers coming soon. But this is, I always say, but if you have a question, doesn't matter what kind of question it is, don't hesitate to submit a request. We usually review these every day, and I review them on Thursdays to make sure things have been answered and addressed. And I'm just going to pause there and see if we have any questions.
There's a few. There are more comments. There's a little dialogue going on in the question box. One question came up about other disease phenotypes, which I know is probably beyond the scope of N3C. But has there been any discussion of that? I mentioned the precision medicine project, which is now called All of Us, which many of us heard about yesterday in the closing session of the AMIA meeting. Are you aware of any other activities, or is this project really focused on COVID-19?
This particular project is focused on COVID-19. But right, I was going to mention All of Us as another one. So I think as far as methods for what NIH will do in the future, they're going to look at all of us, and they're going to look at N3C to determine, will we do something similar based on those programs for other disease areas. But that's all the information I have about what's happening right now. Everything's focused on COVID right now.
And that question of linkage came up in Josh Denny's talk yesterday. In fact, I was one of several people who asked it. Are there? This is a great talk, and it's a really nice overview of N3C. And I hope people who are interested will consider. Any questions from the audience out here, or you can either unmute yourself or continue typing in the box. Here we go. A question about accessing the data enclave for someone who's not associated with OHSU, but with a different institution.
So yes, if you can access anybody, it's open to anybody, regardless if they're here at OHSU or not. If they're with another institution, they want to check to see if their institution has a DUA in place. And you can go to the website, there's a link, and maybe I can put it in chat. I stopped sharing, hold on. I can put in chat, and you can actually go out there and see if your institution has a DUA. If they don't have a DUA, you can encourage them to work with NCATS to get a DUA in place. There are a couple of people who don't work with an institution. They're independent investigators, and so they still have to sign a DUA as an independent investigators, but NCATS really prefers that the institution actually signs a DUA.
Okay, another question from Homer Chin. How does this relate to other projects like PCORNet?
So the members from PCORNet, Trinetics, ACT, all those groups are participating here in N3C. They're part of the data harmonization teams and data quality teams. They helped us set up this infrastructure because they know their data models better than we do. So they're all participating in this. I think everybody has their own initiatives as well around COVID, and this is a supplement to those initiatives, but they're all participating with us because this is a centralized approach.
So I know that PCORNet's data model is one of the 4 that you ingest, and then it's up to the institution to choose if, say, they want to take their PCORNet data and put it into the enclave?
Right. So we do have institutions. I think there is a PCORNet initiative around COVID too. And some of those institutions are providing their data to to that network and as well as ours, which makes it easy for them because they're not doing, don't have to redo the work. So they are sending the same data to us. There is going to be a slight change. There's going to be a symposium I think in January, because the COVID data across these models is different. And we know a lot more about COVID now. And some of the data models don't carry all of the data that's needed for COVID. So there's going to be a symposium in January about additional information that's going to be needed that the data models are not providing, that we're going to need in order to really do more robust research around COVID.
There's a question from Nicole about opportunities for students. Should they go through their advisors, or should they be encouraged to join independently?
I would suggest they talk to their advisors. They can come to us certainly independently, but they go through their advisors. It might help them determine where they might best fit in the N3C organization, whether if they have a research question, how best to address that research question. If they are seeking other types of experiences, they can do that. If they would like for me to help them think about it, I'm used to working with a bunch of different students to give them all kinds of experiences, for informatics, and then I hire them. But I would say they should talk to their advisor first, and I'll be happy to join just to let them know what the opportunities look like and what kind of support they might be able to get through N3C. And just so you know, I'm throwing this out there, but we probably will need some, student help, either, part-time to help us with some, this could apply to their projects or to their learning, but we probably will be hiring someone temporarily for maybe 6 months to a year to help us out with some things.
Yeah, and I would probably advise students to, if nothing else, just to let their advisors know. And there, there may be opportunities, for example, to get independent study, research kind of credit and so forth. So students probably should work for their advisors. Let me ask another question. So this past week, we heard about 70,000 people who participated in vaccine trials. I suppose very few of them actually, though, have symptomatic COVID-19. But any thoughts of putting their data into the enclave?
Yes, we are having discussions around that now about the vaccine data. And so we did take a look. There is some vaccine information in the enclave. But we're trying to figure out a strategy in order to increase more information from the different sites for that. Also, we're imagining that all the data, all the vaccine information may not be going through the hospitals. It may be going through the community clinics and places like that. So we're trying to figure out ways to engage with those community clinics to see if we're able to get vaccine information that way as well. Ocean is one of the groups that just joined N3C. And so we will have data hopefully through Ocean, which will be great for those of us at OHSU, but we're hoping to also have more community hospitals to contribute. But right now, we don't know if all that information is in the academic medical center EHR data, but when it is, we are getting that data. Mm-hmm. That's a hot topic right now, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Well, okay. I want to thank you for an interesting and informative talk. As I think people can tell, I have a lot of enthusiasm for this project as well. And it's great that, a significant part of it is occurring at OHSU. Thanks a lot, Anita. And someday when we go back to working in person, you can come visit the department and meet us face to face and get to know us that way as well.
I'd be delighted.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you at the next conference.